It wasn't the scalding heat of the coffee that made Eleanor Brooks flinch. It was the profound silence that enveloped the room immediately after. No sharp intake of breath from the onlookers. No hurried apology from the perpetrator. Just the faint sizzle of the hot liquid seeping into the fabric of her light blue blouse, and the distant, almost mocking clink of a stirring spoon against a ceramic mug somewhere in the background. As if the entire world had paused to witness a uniformed man exerts his petty dominance over someone who resembled the quiet strength of so many loved ones in their lives. Her blouse, a soft cotton blend she had chosen that morning for its comfort during her weekly routine, darkened rapidly under the assault, the coffee tracing erratic paths down her chest like veins of unwanted intrusion. Yet she didn't scream, didn't utter a single word of protest, didn't even shift her posture in defense. Instead, she simply gazed at him, not with blazing anger or cowering fear, but with a deep, unflinching recognition, as though she had encountered not this specific face before, but the archetype he represented, the embodiment of unchecked authority wrapped in entitlement. Across the cozy confines of the Sunrise Cafe, a teenage boy named Tyler, who had been idly scrolling through his phone while waiting for his to-go order of a blueberry muffin and iced latte, instinctively raised his device, capturing the entire unfolding scene, the deliberate tilt of the cup, the spreading stain. The glint of the badge number on the officer's uniform meant what transpired next would ripple far beyond the spilled beverage, beyond personal humiliations or fleeting internet fame. For the woman enduring this indignity was the very person who had nurtured and shaped the individual, now leading the entire local police force. The Sunrise Cafe nestled comfortably on the corner of Elm and Fifth in the quaint town of Oakwood. A narrow establishment with sun-faded windows that let in the morning light in golden slants, infusing the air with the warm aroma of freshly baked cinnamon rolls and ground beans that seemed to permeate every wooden beam and cushioned seat. It was the sort of place where patrons didn't merely sip their drinks, but claimed territories, forging unspoken bonds with the space over years of habitual visits. The second booth by the window, with its vinyl upholstery slightly worn from countless sittings and a view of the bustling street outside where pedestrians hurried by with umbrellas or briefcases depending on the weather, had become Eleanor's sanctuary every Wednesday at precisely 8:15 a.m. She would arrive in her sensible gray walking shoes, a knitted scarf draped elegantly over her shoulders even in milder seasons, and a small leather-bound notebook tucked under her arm, ready to jot down thoughts or recipes that crossed her mind. Amid the gentle hum of conversation, she never indulged in elaborate orders, preferring the simplicity of black coffee with just one sugar, no cream, allowing the bitterness to ground her as she observed the world outside, occasionally offering a warm smile to the barista, a young woman named Mia who had come to anticipate her arrival like clockwork. Eleanor was 64, a widow who had lost her husband to a sudden heart attack a decade prior, a grandmother to 4 energetic grandchildren whom she spoiled with homemade cookies and stories of resilience, and a retired special education teacher whose career had been defined by patience and quiet advocacy for those often overlooked. She was the type to send handwritten birthday cards weeks in advance, to press wildflowers between the pages of old novels, and to volunteer at the local library reading programs, her presence in Oakwood evoking descriptions from neighbors as sweet, unassuming, and profoundly kind. On this particular morning, as she stepped through the cafe's jingling door and nodded politely to the familiar faces behind the counter, no one could have foreseen the disruption about to shatter the tranquility. Until Deputy Derek Vance strode in with the swagger of someone accustomed to deference. Derek wasn't a stranger to Oakwood. He had grown up in a neighboring town, excelled in high school football at Westridge High, where he was known for his aggressive plays on the field, and enlisted in the sheriff's department right after dropping out of community college, where Academic rigors had clashed with his preference for immediate action over introspection. He carried himself with an air of ownership, his smiles often laced with insincerity. His badge worn like a crown that justified any whim, and he valued order above all, interpreting it through the lens of his convenience. Today, that second booth by the window wasn't vacant, and that fact ignited a spark of irritation in him that he had no intention of suppressing. He fixed his gaze on Eleanor, who politely shifted her coffee cup slightly to allow him passage. Assuming he merely needed to navigate the narrow aisle, but passage wasn't his goal, he coveted the seat itself. "You mind moving, ma'am?" he asked, his tone laced with feigned courtesy that barely masked the command beneath. Eleanor blinked, caught off guard but composed, replying softly, "Pardon. I've been sitting here every Wednesday for years now." Derek narrowed his eyes, scanning the cafe where the barista had paused mid-pour, and two teenagers by the pastry display exchanged whispers. He disliked an audience, especially one that might question his authority, so he flashed a tight, performative grin. "Guess it's time someone showed you how things work around here," he muttered, and in a swift, deliberate motion that stunned the room into paralysis, he grasped her coffee cup, tilted it with calculated slowness, and poured the steaming contents directly onto the front of her blouse. The cafe didn't erupt in chaos. Instead, a heavy silence descended to shocking for outbursts, too raw for immediate reaction. The cruelty hanging in the air like a fog. Eleanor didn't cry out, didn't retaliate, didn't even wipe the liquid away immediately. She merely met his eyes, seeing through the facade to the insecurity fueling his actions. Then rose steadily, smoothed her hands on her skirt, and said in a voice barely above a whisper, "You've made a mistake." Derek chuckled, a hollow sound that echoed awkwardly. "Oh yeah. What are you gonna do? Call your son?" Her response was calm, almost prophetic. "I won't need to," as she placed her napkin neatly on the table. Behind her, Tyler, the teenage boy, had lifted his phone higher, not initially intending to record, but compelled by the injustice unfolding. He captured it all now without blinking, the lens panning inadvertently to the community bulletin board by the entrance, where a framed photograph depicted Oakwood's newly appointed police chief. A black man named Jamal Brooks, with a caption reading "Proudly raised by Eleanor Brooks." The silence in the Sunrise Cafe was palpable but fleeting, for beyond its walls, a storm was brewing that would amplify the incident into a national conversation. The video began with a slightly unsteady frame, ambient sounds of clinking utensils, and a faint jazz melody from the cafe's radio filtering through, accompanied by Tyler's whispered commentary, "Is this guy for real?" It lasted a mere 38 seconds, encapsulating the poor Eleanor's stoic composure. The zoom to the bulletin board revealing her connection to the chief, and it was uploaded impulsively to Tyler's social media with a caption, "This cop just assaulted an old lady in Oakwood. Turns out she's the police chief's mom." By mid-morning, it had migrated to Facebook, garnering shares from local groups concerned with community safety. By late morning, it exploded on Twitter, where users dissected every frame. The hashtag #CoffeeCop emerging organically as a rallying cry against the subtle aggressions that plague everyday life, symbolizing not just this act, but the broader spectrum of power abuses that evade scrutiny until captured on camera. Views climbed exponentially 2.7 million within hours as news outlets scrambled to verify details. Unidentified elderly woman assaulted in Oakwood. Cafarily motivated mother of town's police chief. The Oakwood Police Department's online presence was inundated, their feeds flooded with demands for accountability. No official statement forthcoming, the absence itself fueling speculation and outrage. Voicemails piled up, emails poured in from across the country, and in a modest office downtown, Chief Jamal Brooks first encountered the footage when an aide rushed into his strategy meeting. Phone extended with trembling hands, he watched it. Once, the color draining from his face, his fists clenching involuntarily beneath the table. A surge of fury, tempered by the discipline he had cultivated over years in law enforcement. Without a word, he excused himself, badge gleaming on his chest as he strode toward the station, his mind racing through memories of his mother's unwavering support, her lessons in quiet dignity amidst adversity. Jamal had risen through the ranks, not by aggression, but by integrity. Inspired by Eleanor's example of teaching children with special needs, instilling in him the value of empathy and authority. Now, that personal history collided with his professional duty. The media vans began assembling outside the station by noon, reporters positioning themselves with microphones at the ready, local activists organizing a gathering for the afternoon. Posters hastily printed reading stand for Eleanor. Inside, the atmosphere was tense, officers avoiding eye contact as Jamal passed, conversations halting abruptly. He bypassed formalities, entering the briefing room and summoning Deputy Vance. Directly. Derek arrived casually, popping gum, a smirk playing on his lips. Assuming it was about some minor paperwork oversight, something about a report I missed. The door closed with a definitive click, and Jamal's voice, steady yet laced with an undercurrent of ice, cut through. "You poured coffee on a woman this morning?" Derek blinked. "Caught off guard, sir. She's 64, a retired teacher, and the mother of your chief of police." The room grew heavier with silence as realization dawned. Derek stammering, "I didn't know. I thought she was just ... Jamal interjected, "Just another nobody. Just another black woman in your path." Derek's protests faltered under Jamal's unwavering stare. She didn't raise her voice, Derek. She didn't fight back. But the world is hearing her now. He placed a printed screenshot from the video on the table. Eleanor's dignified expression staring back, then declared, "You're on administrative leave, effective immediately. Internal affairs will handle the rest. This badge doesn't shield bullies." By afternoon, #Eleanor Brooks trended on TikTok, with users creating duets, a young artist sketching her poised figure against the cafe window, poets composing verses about silenced strength, educators sharing anecdotes of their encounters with bias, transforming the incident from isolated cruelty to a catalyst for broader dialogue on systemic issues. National networks picked up the story by evening, anchors expressing disbelief. The assault is shocking enough, but Eleanor's grace in response speaks volumes. At dusk, Jamal faced a makeshift podium outside the station, no script in hand. His voice resolute. "My name is Jamal Brooks. I serve as Oakwood's police chief, and I was raised by the woman in that video. What happened to her is a disgrace not just to her, not just to me, but to this community and anyone who believes in decency. This isn't about one officer. It's about a system that allows minor tyrannies to fester until they're exposed. I won't let this department harbor those who hide cruelty behind authority." The crowd, a mix of supporters and skeptics, fell silent, cameras flashing as his words echoed, marking the beginning of a reckoning that would challenge Oakwood's foundations. As the video continued its viral ascent, surpassing 5 million views overnight, it inspired a wave of personal testimonies. A teenager in a distant city duetting with tears, narrating her brush with authority. A mother sharing a thread about protecting her child from similar indignities. A community leader invoking Eleanor's composure as a model for resistance. In Oakwood, residents began gathering informally, some carrying symbolic coffee cups to vigils outside the cafe where chalk messages on the sidewalk read, "Her silence speaks louder than shouts." Eleanor herself remained at home, physically unharmed according to paramedics, but enveloped in a contemplative quiet, her blouse laundered but the memory lingering. She hadn't sought the spotlight, yet it found her, amplifying her lifelong ethos. of dignity over drama. Tyler, the boy who filmed, received messages of gratitude and backlash alike, but he stood by his action, explaining in interviews how witnessing the poor compelled him to act, turning a bystander into an unwitting activist. Meanwhile, Derek's suspension sparked internal murmurs. Some officers questioning the swiftness, others quietly relieved, hinting at prior whispers of his abrasive nature. Jamal, reviewing department logs late into the night, uncovered subtle patterns, unresolved complaints, echoing similar themes of overreach fueling his resolve to dig deeper. The hashtag evolved, spawning merchandise, memes, and even a petition for mandatory bias training. While artists worldwide contributed a mural in a nearby city depicting Eleanor with a halo of coffee steam, symbolizing endurance. Writers penning essays on the power of non-reaction in the face of provocation. As the sun rose the next day, Oakwood buzzed with a newfound energy. Conversations in barbershops and grocery lines shifting from weather to justice. Families discussing the video at dinner tables, children asking why such things happen. Eleanor's notebook, usually filled with recipes, now held reflections on the incident. Her words poetic in their simplicity. In the spill, I found my stand. Jamal's speech replayed on local news loops, inspiring copycat statements from other leaders, broadening the narrative from personal affront to societal mirror. The cafe, once a haven of routine, became a pilgrimage site, patrons leaving notes of solidarity on the bulletin board beside Jamal's photo. Tyler's phone buzzed incessantly with notifications, his follower count skyrocketing, but he focused on the positive, starting a fundraiser for community education programs in Eleanor's name. Derek, isolated in his home, scrolled through the backlash, his initial defiance cracking under the weight of public scorn, regretting not the act, but its exposure. Community organizers planned workshops on de-escalation, inviting Eleanor as a guest, though she politely declined, preferring to let her example speak. National commentators debated the racial undertones, citing statistics on disproportionate encounters, turning hashtag Coffee Cop into a teachable moment. In quieter moments, Jamal visited his mother, their conversations deep and affirming, reinforcing the bonds that shaped him. The land try-on didn't wane. It intensified, with celebrities retweeting, influencers analyzing, and everyday people sharing parallel stories, creating a tapestry of shared experiences that validated Eleanor's quiet power. As views hit 10 million, the pressure on the department mounted, forcing preliminary reviews and promises of transparency. Eleanor's grace became legendary, her image iconized in digital art, her story a beacon for those feeling voiceless. Oakwood, once sleepy, now pulsed with purpose. The incident a spark igniting long overdue conversations on equity and empathy. Jamal's leadership was tested, but affirmed, his mother's influence evident in every measured step he took. The video? Short, proved endless in impact, reminding all that one act of recording could unravel threads of injustice woven into the fabric of society. And so, the story unfolded not as a conclusion, but as an invitation for change. With Eleanor's silence echoing louder than any roar, the sun had barely crested the horizon when Chief Jamal Brooks unlocked the heavy door to the Oakwood Police Department's basement archives. The air thick with the musty scent of aged paper and forgotten accountability. A place where files gathered dust like secrets too inconvenient to face. It was here, amid the rows of metal cabinets scarred by years of neglect, that he began his solitary quest. Driven by the video that had exposed not just Derek Vance's cruelty, but potentially a deeper rot within the force he led. Jamal's footsteps echoed softly on the concrete floor, the fluorescent lights buzzing to life overhead as he pulled open the first drawer labeled Complaints 2010 to 2015. His fingers sifting through yellowed folders that chronicled grievances. dismissed with curt notations like insufficient evidence or officer cleared internally, each one a potential echo of his mother's silent endurance. He wasn't searching blindly. The viral footage had ignited a fire in him, prompting an initial review of Derek's record, which revealed subtle red flags, verbal warnings for overzealous conduct during traffic stops, a pattern of complaints from minority residents that never escalated beyond paperwork. But Jamal suspected more, and as he cross-referenced dates and names, a picture emerged: 3 unresolved incidents involving Derek alone, including a 2018 altercation where a young Latino driver claimed excessive force during a routine search. The report buried under layers of bureaucratic dismissal. Hours blurred into one another as Jamal compiled notes, his coffee growing cold on a nearby stool, the isolation of the basement mirroring the growing divide he felt from his department. Whispers had already started upstairs, officers exchanging glances in the break room, some muttering about overreaction to what they downplayed as a prank gone wrong. To formalize the probe, Jamal assembled a small internal team, enlisting Lieutenant Lena Hayes, a no-nonsense veteran with a reputation for fairness, her sharp eyes and meticulous nature making her an ideal partner in this delicate unraveling. Lena arrived with a stack of fresh notepads and a determined nod, diving into the digital databases while Jamal tackled the physical files, their collaboration uncovering a 4th complaint against Eureka, 2020 domestic call, where a black woman alleged he had intimidated her during questioning, her statement noting his aggressive posture and racial slurs. Yet the case was closed without follow-up, signed off by a now-retired supervisor. As they pieced together timelines, Lena paused over an old dashcam video log, her voice low. "Chief, this one's from Derek's patrol car." Dated 2 years back footage of a stop involving a group of teenagers at a park after hours. They queued it up on an ancient monitor in the corner, the grainy black and white feed showing Derek approaching the youths, his body language escalating quickly from inquiry to confrontation, shoving one boy against the vehicle without provocation, the audio capturing slurs that made Jamal's stomach churn. It wasn't just misconduct, it was a blatant abuse of power targeting minorities, a pattern that suggested Derek's actions in the cafe were not anomalous but habitual. The discovery weighed heavily, prompting Jamal to reopen all 4 cases officially, notifying internal affairs and expanding the scope to include any officers with similar complaint histories, a decision that sent ripples through the department as word leaked out. Upstairs, the atmosphere shifted palpably. Sergeant Mike Torres, a long-timer who had mentored Derek early on, cornered Lena in the hallway, his tone laced with defensiveness. "This is turning into a witch hunt. Derek's rough around the edges, but he's one of us." Lena held her ground, replying evenly, "If one of us means ignoring patterns, then maybe we need to redefine that." The resistance wasn't overt at first, manifesting in subtle ways. Delayed responses to Jamal's emails requesting additional records, anonymous notes left on his desk reading "Loyalty Matters," and a noticeable chill during shift briefings where officers averted their eyes or offered clipped acknowledgments. Yet amid the pushback, pockets of support emerged from younger recruits like Officer Riley Chen, who approached Jamal privately after hours. "I've seen things, Chief, small stuff, but it adds up. If you're cleaning house, count me in." Riley's endorsement bolstered Jamal's resolve, leading him to assign her to cross-check witness statements from the reopened cases, her fresh perspective uncovering discrepancies in Derek's reports that hinted at fabrication. Outside the station, the community mobilized in ways that contrasted the internal friction. A vigil formed organically at the Sunrise Cafe that evening, residents gathering with candles flickering against the twilight, their faces illuminated in quiet solidarity as they shared personal stories. A middle-aged man recounting a traffic stop where he felt profiled, a woman describing how her son's encounter with police left him wary of authority. The event drew media attention, cameras capturing the crowd's chance of justice for Eleanor, while organizers passed out flyers detailing ways to report misconduct anonymously, fostering a sense of empowerment that spilled over into online forums where locals debated reform. Eleanor herself, recovering in the comfort of her cozy home lined with bookshelves of educational tomes and family photos, received a tentative visit from Tyler, the teenager whose video had sparked it all. He knocked hesitantly, the bouquet of daisies in hand, his voice cracking as he apologized for the unintended fame. "I didn't mean to blow this up, I just couldn't stand by." Eleanor invited him in, her living room warm with the scent of herbal tea, and as they sat on her floral-patterned sofa, she placed a reassuring hand on his. "You did something brave, young man. You gave truth a pair of eyes when it needed them most." Their conversation turned profound, Eleanor sharing tales from her teaching days about encouraging silent students to find their voices, emphasizing that witnessing injustice was the first step to change, leaving Tyler inspired and less burdened by the viral storm he had unleashed. As news of the vigil spread, it attracted an unexpected ally, retired officer Harlan Reed, a decorated veteran who had served 30 years before hanging up his badge, now living quietly on the outskirts of town. Moved by the footage and the community's response, he mailed Jamal an envelope containing photocopied memos from his era, documents revealing a network of informal cover-ups where complaints against problem officers like Derek's predecessors were routinely sidelined to maintain morale. Harlan's note read simply, "I stayed silent too long. Use this to break the cycle." Jamal pored over the materials late into the night, the revelations painting a picture of systemic leniency, supervisors discouraging full investigations, peers vouching for each other in ways that prioritize brotherhood over justice, fueling his decision to compile a preliminary list of officers with flagged records. Not just Derek, but 5 others whose files showed recurring themes of bias and overreach. Publicizing the list was a bold move. Jamal posted it on the department's community board the next morning, a single sheet under glass listing names, badge numbers, and brief descriptions of reopened cases, accompanied by his handwritten addendum. Transparency builds trust. Silence erodes it. The reaction was swift and polarized. 2 officers submitted resignation letters by noon, citing hostile environment, while others rallied in private chats, labeling it a betrayal. Yet, the community applauded, with social media buzzing anew under #OakwoodReckoning. Users praising Jamal's courage and sharing the list far and wide. The mayor, Patricia Klein, a pragmatic politician with an eye on re-election, summoned Jamal to a closed-door meeting in her wood-paneled office overlooking the town square. Her expression a mix of concern and calculation. "Chief, I support accountability, but this list is stirring the pot. Business owners are calling, worried about the town's image." Jamal sat across from her, unflinching. The image was tarnished. Long before the video, Mayor, ignoring complaints doesn't make them vanish, it makes them fester. Their discussion grew heated, Klein pressing for a softer approach, perhaps private reprimands instead of public shaming. But Jamal countered with evidence from Harlan's files, illustrating how past leniency had enabled escalations like the cafe incident. Ultimately, she relented, agreeing to back an external audit if needed, though her hesitation underscored the political tightrope she walked. Back at the station, Jamal's isolation deepened. During a staff meeting, tensions boiled over when Sergeant Torres challenged him openly. "You're alienating good cops over old gripes? How do we patrol if we're looking over our shoulders?" Jamal responded calmly, "By remembering the oath, protect and serve, not protect ourselves." The exchange highlighted the rift, with veteran officers forming cliques of quiet dissent, while newer ones, like Riley and a few allies, began volunteering for the investigation team, their enthusiasm injecting hope amid the strain. Community support continued to build, with a local church hosting a forum where residents aired grievances. One elderly gentleman describing a decades-old stop that mirrored Derek's patterns. His testimony recorded and shared online, amplifying calls for change. Eleanor, observing from afar, felt a swell of pride in her son's steadfastness, though worry creased her brow. She confided in a phone call to Jamal, "You're walking through fire, son, but remember, fire refines." As the chapter in this unfolding saga progressed, Jamal uncovered yet another layer, hidden audio recording from a 2019 interrogation involving one of the listed officers, revealing coerced statements from a suspect of color. The tape tucked away in a mislabeled box that Lena had unearthed during a late-night sift. This finding prompted Jamal to mandate body cam audits for all active personnel, a policy shift that further alienated detractors but garnered praise from civil rights groups monitoring the situation. Whispers of a union grievance bubbled up, hints of organized resistance, yet Jamal pressed on, bolstered by anonymous tips from within the ranks' emails detailing overlooked incidents. One describing Derek's off-duty barbs at community events. The community's vigil evolved into weekly gatherings, evolving from mourning to mobilization, with workshops on knowing rights and filming encounters safely. Tyler often attending to share his experience, his bond with Eleanor growing into a mentorship that bridged generations. Harlan Reed made a personal visit to the station, his weathered face etched with regret as he elaborated on his documents. "I closed cases to keep peace, but peace without justice is just illusion." There, conversation extended into strategy, Harlan advising on navigating internal politics, warning of backlash from entrenched figures. Mayor Klein, facing public pressure, issued a statement endorsing the investigation, a move that steadied her standing but intensified scrutiny on Jamal, who now fielded national interview requests, declining most to focus on the work. Lena's team expanded the probe, identifying cross-connections between officers' shared shifts on problematic calls, mutual alibis in reports suggesting a culture of mutual protection rather than isolated errors. Amid this, Jamal experienced personal tolls, sleepless nights replaying the video, strained interactions with his own family who worried for his safety, yet Eleanor's quiet encouragement anchored him. The chapter's tension peaked with the public. Release of a summarized report on the reopened cases, anonymized but damning, sparking a wave of voluntary statements from past victims who felt emboldened to come forward. One such story came from a former resident, now living states away, who emailed details of a 2017 assault by Derek during a protest, her account corroborated by photos she had preserved. This influx overwhelmed the team, but validated their efforts. Internal conflicts escalated when two officers on the list confronted Jamal in the parking lot after shift. Their voices raised, "You're destroying careers over hearsay." Jamal de-escalated firmly. Careers built on harm deserve scrutiny. The encounter leaked to local news, framing Jamal as both hero and divider, polarizing Oakwood further. Support from younger officers solidified, forming an informal alliance that assisted in digitizing old files, their late-night sessions fostering camaraderie amid adversity. Community leaders organized a fundraiser for legal aid in filing complaints, with Eleanor attending virtually, her presence a silent endorsement. As the sun set on another exhaustive day, Jamal reflected in his office, stacks of files surrounding him like sentinels, knowing the investigation was unearthing not just past wrongs, but paving a path for future integrity. The chapter culminated in Eleanor's first public appearance since the incident, a televised interview from her home. Her voice steady and soft. "I didn't need to shout that day, because the truth has its volume. What my son is doing isn't about revenge, it's about hope for a system where no one feels unseen. Her words resonated, trending anew, bridging the internal strife with external inspiration, setting the stage for deeper conflicts ahead while ensuring the narrative remained fresh in its exploration of institutional shadows and communal light. The investigation pressed forward, with Lena discovering a chain of emails from years past instructing officers to minimize certain reports, implicating higher-ups long retired but whose legacies lingered. Jamal confronted a current captain implicated peripherally. The meeting was tense but productive, leading to a voluntary disclosure that unraveled another thread. Community stories poured in via a hotline established post-vigil, each one a mosaic piece: a father's tale of his daughter's harassment, an immigrant's fear during a welfare check. Tyler's role evolved, volunteering to compile digital evidence, his tech-savvy aiding in video analysis. Harlan's insights proved invaluable, revealing informal codes used to flag complaints for dismissal. Mayor Klein navigated donor calls, balancing fiscal concerns with moral imperatives, her alliance with Jamal strengthening through shared briefings. Internal sabotage attempts surfaced misplaced files, tampered logs, but Riley's vigilance caught them, leading to discreet warnings. Eleanor's interview sparked a national dialogue, with experts citing Oakwood as a case study in reform. Jamal's isolation eased slightly with family dinners where his wife offered unwavering support, reminding him of personal stakes. The list expanded subtly, adding a sixth name based on new evidence, prompting more resignations and union murmurs. Vigil attendance swelled, incorporating art installations depicting resilience. As weeks unfolded, the probe's momentum built, unearthing a 2014 training memo, downplaying bias education, fueling calls for curriculum overhaul. Jamal's leadership shone in town halls, addressing fears transparently. The chapter wove these elements into a tapestry of discovery and division, each revelation distinct, keeping the narrative dynamic and engaging. The union's letter arrived like a storm cloud on an otherwise clear morning, sealed in a crisp envelope that Chief Jamal Brooks slit open with a letter opener shaped like a miniature badge, a gift from his daughter years ago. The contents were formal, accusatory, and laced with the kind of legalese that masked desperation, charging him with fostering a hostile work environment, violating privacy protocols by publicizing the list of flagged officers, and succumbing to external political pressures at the expense of departmental unity, demanding an immediate retraction and threatening a no-confidence vote if unmet. Jamal read it twice in his office, the morning light filtering through blinds, casting striped shadows across the page. His expression unchanging as he absorbed the implications. This wasn't just pushback. It was a coordinated assault from within, the police union flexing its muscle to protect the status quo. A move that would test not only his leadership, but the fragile momentum of reform sweeping through Oakwood. He set the letter aside and called Lieutenant Lena Hayes into the room, her arrival swift and purposeful, coffee mug in hand as she scanned the document. They're going for the jugular, Chief. If they rally enough votes, the council could force your hand? Jamal nodded, his voice steady. Let them try. Votes don't erase evidence. The union's grievances quickly leaked to the press, splashed across local headlines as Chief Brooks under fire. Union accuses overreach, igniting talk radio. Debates where callers decried the investigations as anti-cop hysteria while others hailed them as overdue cleansing. Social media erupted anew, with hashtag #DefendOurChief trending alongside vitriolic counter-hashtags like #badge, BETRAYER, polarizing Oakwood into camps that spilled into everyday interactions, neighbors arguing over fences, baristas overhearing heated exchanges at the Sunrise Cafe, now a symbol of the divide. Amid this, subtle acts of sabotage began surfacing within the department. Patrol logs mysteriously altered overnight, with timestamps on key incidents shifted to obscure patterns of misconduct. One evening, the power surged in the evidence room, frying a server housing digitized complaint files. An accident that IT traced to a tripped breaker, but Jamal suspected was deliberate, prompting him to install discrete cameras and assign Riley Chen to monitor access logs. The sabotage escalated when a doctored video clip circulated online, pieced together from departmental security footage and edited to show Jamal dismissing a white officer's concerns with what appeared to be racial undertones. The manipulation crude but effective in stirring resentment. It went viral on fringe forums before mainstream pickup, forcing Jamal to address it in an impromptu press briefing outside the station. His tone measured, "Fabrications won't derail facts. This department will emerge stronger, not splintered." The clip's origin traced back to a union sympathizer in it, leading to their suspension and a ripple of paranoia among staff, with officers whispering about snitches in the locker rooms. Mayor Patricia Cline, navigating the political minefield, convened an emergency session with council members in the ornate City Hall chambers, where polished oak tables reflected the stern faces debating Jamal's fate. One councilor, a former union rep, pushed for mediation, arguing the probes threatened public safety by demoralizing the force, while another, a community advocate, countered with testimonials from vigil attendees, emphasizing how unchecked abuses had eroded trust for generations. Cline, her alliance with Jamal tested, proposed a compromise, an independent arbitrator to review the union's claims, buying time while subtly endorsing the reforms. Jamal agreed reluctantly, viewing it as a strategic pause, but privately worried it could dilute the urgency. The arbitrator, a retired judge named Elena Vasquez from a neighboring county, arrived with a reputation for impartiality, setting up in a neutral conference room at the library, poring over files with a keen eye. That missed nothing. Her sessions grilled both sides' union reps, presenting affidavits from officers claiming fear of reprisal. Jamal countering with Harlan Reed's historical memos and victim statements like Jasmine's from the earlier dashcam revelation. In this chapter, the focus shifted to new voices, such as a whistleblower nurse who had treated injuries from unreported stops, her testimony detailing bruises consistent with excessive force. Vasquez's interim report, leaked prematurely, validated Jamal's process as procedurally sound but urged de-escalation. A mixed bag that emboldened the union to proceed with a no-confidence ballot. Ballots distributed anonymously via secure email, the vote hanging like a guillotine over the department. Tensions peaked during the voting period, with anonymous threats slipping under Jamal's door, back off or face consequences, prompting heightened security around his home, where his wife installed motion lights and his daughter, now a college student studying criminology, called daily with concern. "Dad, promise me you're careful." This isn't just about policy anymore. Community backlash against the union swelled with protests outside their local office. Signs reading "Unions for Workers, not cover-ups." Organized by a coalition of mothers, including Eleanor's neighbor, who shared her own story of a profiled son during the vigils. Media scrutiny intensified, national outlets sending crews to Oakwood. One investigative journalist uncovering union donations to council members, exposing potential conflicts that tilted public opinion further toward reform. The vote results tallied after a tense week fell short of the majority needed 48% against Jamal, a narrow escape attributed to silent support from reform-minded officers like Riley and Lena, who had quietly canvassed peers, with evidence packets highlighting the stakes. Emboldened, Jamal accelerated policy implementations, announcing a civilian oversight board composed of diverse residents including educators like Eleanor's former colleagues and activists too. Review all future complaints, Their first meeting broadcast live on local TV, fostering transparency that quelled some doubts. Vasquez's interim report, leaked prematurely, validated Jamal's process as procedurally sound but urged de-escalation. A mixed bag that emboldened the union to proceed with a no-confidence ballot. Ballots distributed anonymously via secure email, the vote hanging like a guillotine over the department. Tensions peaked during the voting period, with anonymous threats slipping under Jamal's door, back off or face consequences, prompting heightened security around his home, where his wife installed motion lights and his daughter, now a college student studying criminology, called daily with concern. "Dad, promise me you're careful?" This isn't just about policy anymore. Community backlash against the union swelled, with protests outside their local office. Signs reading "Unions for Workers, not cover-ups." Organized by a coalition of mothers, including Eleanor's neighbor, who shared her own story of a profiled son during the vigils. Media scrutiny intensified, national outlets sending crews to Oakwood. One investigative journalist uncovering union donations to council members, exposing potential conflicts that tilted public opinion further toward reform. The vote results, tallied after a tense week, fell short of the majority needed 48% against Jamal. A narrow escape attributed to silent support from reform-minded officers like Riley and Lena, who had quietly canvassed peers, with evidence packets highlighting the stakes. Emboldened, Jamal accelerated policy implementations, announcing a civilian oversight board composed of diverse residents, including educators like Eleanor's former colleagues and activists too. Review all future complaints. Their first meeting broadcast live on local TV, fostering transparency that quelled some doubts.